Good day and welcome to my presentation. Let me begin my presentation asking you what I consider very interesting questions. Have you ever wondered how aircraft fly? Have you ever wondered how a machine that weighs more than 60 tons, that is the average weight of a commercial aircraft that takes you from Bogota to Medellin to Cartagena or even to Buenos Aires or Miami, is able to be suspended on air for long hours, flying over mountains, seas, and taking you from continent to continent in just a couple of hours? If the answer is yes, please stay in this presentation. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Alejandro Acuña. I am finishing my career of commercial pilot, and until today, I have accumulated more than 200 hours in two different aircraft. So now, the presentation. It is called How Planes Fly, the basic of aerodynamics. If you want to know more, please stay. I'm going to begin presenting you the topics of this presentation, a very short table of content to provide some order to the audience. Um, First is the history of aviation. I know this presentation is how aircraft flies, but I find interesting to tell you about the basics of aviation and how was created. Second, what is aerodynamics? The third topic is the four forces of flight. It sounds little bit confusing, but with the time you are going to understand. Fourth is how to control an airplane or an aircraft. And the last topic is the little conclusion about the presentation. Okay, to begin with the topics, would like to start with the history of aviation. Did you hear about the Wright brothers? If not, let me tell you a little bit more. In 1903, there were two pair of brothers that were very interesting in making things fly. In this way, and in this year, these two people that were brothers um, have achieved that something flies. This was an aircraft, and it was powered by itself, and it was like controlled by a human being that is a one of these brothers. The second main year or decade for the aviation is 1910, and in this decade, the first commercial flights have begun. Obviously, the idea of taking a person from point A to point B and pay for it, like it begins, but it was very short flights, no more than 1 or 2 hours. 20 years later, in the decade of the 30s, the first longer flights begin, flights for more than 4 hours, that you were able to travel, I don't know, from Bogota to Barranquilla. I know it sounds weird, but at these times, the aircraft were slowly that they are today. So a flight from 3 to 4 hours was not far from Barranquilla or Venezuela. In 1940, the World War II was developed, and the importance of these years is that it brings innovation to the aviation. It brings the first jet aircraft with a turbine, because before where the aircraft were like the engines were propellers, not with the engines that we know today. And in this decade, the turbines and the jet aircraft were developed. And in 1960s, Boeing introduces the famous 747. I think is the most known and the most famous aircraft in the history. I don't know if you have seen it. It's a aircraft that has two floors, four engines, and it is capable of carrying more than 500 people and fly for more than 15 hours. It is incredible. So, now having in mind this little context of aviation, I would like to continue with the presentation with the what is aerodynamics. Aerodynamics is the science that study how air move around objects. It is used in many industries, cars, of course, aircraft, trains, and all the industries that use air to produce something. This science, it is key to explain how airplanes flies, and it is the basic principle of this answer. If you see aerodynamics, it is like in all industries, but it is so close to us that when you pull out your hand in the car and it is moving and you make different movements, you feel how the air move around your hand, and this has different type of results. And this is the basics of how aircraft flies. Okay, an aircraft can fly based on these four forces. There are two horizontal forces and there are two vertical forces that I am going to explain. These four forces are the following: lift, weight, thrust, and drag. Uh, an aircraft can fly when these four forces are equal and in equilibrium. It is important that the pilot is able to control some of these forces to make that an aircraft can fly in a level state. I'm going to begin the forces with the vertical forces, and the first one and the most important is the lift. If you want to know why an aircraft flies, the short answer is lift. The lift is the aircraft is the force that makes that the aircraft goes up. It is generated by the wings. Basically, when the air collide with the wings, it divided in two. The part that is over the wing goes fast, and the part that goes under the wing is slow. And this produce a pressure difference that makes that aircraft goes up. The second vertical force is the weight. It is generated by the gravity, obviously, and pulls down the aircraft. It is important to say that is a difference in these forces is necessary to make that an aircraft flies. So for an aircraft to take off, it is important that the lift is um, greater or more than the weight, so the aircraft can rotate to the air. And the horizontal forces, it is also divided into, in the picture you can see, To the left, thrust, and to the right is the drag. I'm going to begin with thrust. It is the force generated by the engine and pulls the aircraft to the front. Um, this force is in charge of accelerating the aircraft to fly, sorry. And the other important force, um, horizontal force, is the drag, is the air resistance that the aircraft produce through movements. These two forces move in opposite directions, and it is important to say that if you want to have an aircraft in a level flight, these four forces, lift, weight, thrust, and drag, has to be equal. But if you want to go up, the lift has to be greater, or if you want to go down, you have to make that the lift reduce. Now, here comes another very interesting part, and for me, because I am a pilot, so I like all those topics, and I like to explain to people that probably does know, but how to control an airplane. A pilot has in their cockpit a thing that it's called the yoke, and is the one that you see here in the left picture. It is basically like a wheel in the car where you, with some movements, are able to control the different parts of an aircraft and produce different types of movements that make the aircraft goes left, right, up and down. The first is the ailerons. With this, you are able that you can produce that the aircraft move to the left or right. Basically, it is um, taking the yoke and pull left or right, like using the picture. The second part of controlling an aircraft, it is the elevators. It is the horizontal part that you see in this middle picture. Um, it is controlled through the yoke by pulling or pushing down the yoke. When you pull the yoke, the aircraft goes up, and when you pull or sorry, when you push the yoke, the aircraft goes down. So with the combination of these two movements, with the yoke left, right, or pull or push, the aircraft is controlled in the air. And the last part of controlling an airplane, it is the rudder. An aircraft also have some pedals, but it's not for accelerating. It is for turning in on its own axis. With these pedals, you are also able to control the aircraft on ground. And last in our presentation, I would like to have a very little conclusion that like close all the topic. First of all, we have seen the four forces that affects an aircraft on flight. These one are lift, weight, drag, and thrust. And it is important to say again that to maintain an aircraft in a level flight, these all forces have to be equal. But if you want to take off or start to fly, for example, the lift has to be greater than the weight. Second point, we have also talk about aerodynamics and talk about the importance in aviation. And last point that I consider is important in this presentation of aerodynamics and forces of flight is the basics or the base in terms of knowledge that a pilot has to have to understand his aircraft. So if you have questions, please make it. I'm going to be happy to answer you. Like I said, I am a pilot. I'm studying aviation, so um, I am very interested for this topic, and I am happy to explain some of this theme of aviation. Thank you very much for your attention. My name is Alejandro Acuña.